Early signing day has come and gone for the Florida Gators. Still 2 days in the early signing period, but most action is done on day one. We're going to talk about that for the Florida Gators here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The beat go off? Up it, then my heat go off? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. Happy Thursday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And yesterday was a wild, wild day if you're a Florida Gators fan. If you're part of the Locked On Gators subtext group, then you were getting just incessant, honestly, incessant messages sent your way. And there was a lot to talk about where just you had the LJ McCray stuff, coaching hire on the defensive line, strength and conditioning changes, rumors going throughout the entire day. And it was a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie. I've never been as into early signing day as I was yesterday. So thank you if you're part of the subtext group, if you're part of the Locked On Gators everydayers, if you're someone who follows me on Twitter, I don't care. Thank you very much, because yesterday was one hell of a ride. So we'll talk about just the entire day really today, because that's going to be the focal point. As in today, we're going to talk about the entire day yesterday. Today, I'm really not expecting much movement from the Florida Gators. Most of their even targets have committed and signed elsewhere. But still going to talk about what happened yesterday, because yesterday you signed the whole class. The whole class for the Florida Gators signed yesterday. All 18 high school kids and all 4 transfer portal players. Obviously, you're going to add to that as time goes on, especially with the transfer portal players. I could see, because I know someone asked this in the subtext last night, which if you're not a part of, join subtext.com/LockedOnGators, 2 weeks free, $5 a month after that. But for me, someone asked about if Florida is going to be, if they're done with high school recruiting. I don't think so. There's not many targets that they've even been in touch with ever that are waiting for the second window, but you do have players like Dalen Evans, who someone asked in the Locked On Gators Discord. Florida did not visit him during that 3-week stretch prior to signing day. That's a pretty solid indicator, I think, that Florida doesn't see it as something to pursue, which also makes sense because Sean Spencer is at Texas A&M now, and I'd imagine he would have been a big selling point for Florida if you're Florida. So there's that with Dalen Evans, but I could easily see the staff kind of revisiting some evaluations for some players, probably more athletes than anything else, that are just looking for a spot and think that, and Florida thinks they could fit in. But I wouldn't expect too much movement for high school recruits for Florida. I would look to the portal for what Florida's really going to look to do there. But you signed your entire class yesterday, including DJ Lagway, who was never really in doubt. I feel like the DJ Lagway signing his NLI, his National Letter of Intent, was a very weird saga, only because a lot of Florida Gators fans, on Twitter at least, were very much just like, oh, DJ Lagway might not sign. And Steve Wiltfong was like, oh, USC trying to flip DJ Lagway. They can make it happen. But everybody in Gators media everybody behind the scenes was just like, no, DJ Lagway's signing. Like, we don't even have a little bit of doubt about that one. And so DJ Lagway signed. LJ McCray was one where, take it back a couple of weeks ago. We'll take it back to when Mainland won the state championship. LJ McCray, obviously, on Mainland. I don't know why I said obviously, like you should all know that, but LJ McCray on Mainland won the championship in Tallahassee. Then it comes out that the next day or 2 days later, LJ will visit Florida State and then visit Auburn. The Florida State visit was incredibly quick. He was just in and out, and then he went to Auburn, where I said after the visit, I was like, I was told the visit didn't go that great, genuinely, that it just didn't spark the way that they wanted it to. Then we get to last week, and it's Wednesday. All of the Florida signees are tweeting out the 1 week until I'm a Gator graphics, and LJ McCray didn't, and that caused Gators fans to spiral. And then LJ posted a picture of him on a visit with Florida State staff at his house. Next day, LJ gets the visit from Napier and everyone, and then he tweets out the graphic, and all is well. Signing day comes, and it's about half an hour before he's supposed to sign, and he tells, and Hayes Fawcett posts, "Hey, LJ McCray told me that he's not signing right now." And then Florida fans again spiraled, deservedly so, by the way. It's just I also for a hot minute was like, oh, this is gonna hit the fan. And then I got the news that Florida, if it was an NIL thing, Florida was matching. And if it wasn't, Florida felt good about their relationships that they've worked on with LJ. So wasn't super concerned after that. He ended up signing yesterday at about, I think it was 5:45 Eastern time ish that he signed, and then Billy Napier got to do his press conference. Miles Graham signed early. There wasn't much drama with the kids who actually were committed prior to early signing day and stayed committed through signing day. You added Gregory Smith III and Jaden Baugh to your class yesterday. Jaden Baugh is, of course, the running back that we've talked about quite a bit for Florida. We've had the conversation multiple times about how Florida views him. Florida's very high on him, and just I think that his ability to contribute as a pass catcher is really a big selling point for him, for this coaching staff and Jabbar Jalouk. You look at how they used Montrell Johnson this past year; they threw the ball to him a lot. He had, I think, the third or fourth most targets on the team. So they've gone from Louisiana and 2022 Florida not really targeting the running back much to this year targeting the running back a ton. And yes, part of that is on the quarterback. I just don't think that Anthony Richardson was someone who really looked to the running back as a check down frequently. And Graham Mertz is someone that does that. And then, of course, you added Gregory Smith III from Sumner High, where Gregory Smith III is just learning how to play safety. He's new to the position, learning how to play safety, but 6'4", 200 pounds, being developed by Will Harris could be fun if Will Harris is up to snuff like we expect him to be. And again, this is expecting that he is that. And then the news hit, we'll say early evening, late afternoon, that Florida was indeed hiring a defensive line coach, which was, I will admit, it kind of came out of nowhere in terms of just like it's early signing day. We're fully expecting the staff to just be completely keyed in on what is currently happening, which was, of course, National Signing Day and trying to maintain all of those kids. But Florida made a hire to their defensive line staff, again, which is not super expected, but it's Gerald Chapman. We'll talk about Gerald Chapman in just a second. Before we get to that, Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. And hiring is easy when you have that many genuinely quality candidates. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker because we know you don't have unlimited resources at a small business. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And like I mentioned, Florida hired a defensive line coach yesterday at 4:13 is when I sent the message to the subtexter. This is how I keep notes now, by the way. I'm just like, I send things to subtext and then I just look at what I've sent to subtext to get timestamps and everything. So that's how I do things now. But I sent a message at about 12:45 yesterday that said, I was hearing the name for a potential defensive line coach of Tulane's Gerald Chapman. And then I said, I'll reach out and see if I can find anything more concrete. And then a few hours later, 24/7 reported it. And then Edgar reported it. And then who else reported it? It was all Gators after that. And it was like, yep. First off, 24/7 reported he's emerging as a candidate. And then like 2 minutes, every time someone reports that, like 2 minutes later, it's like, oh yeah, he's hired. And so that's what happened. But Tulane's Gerald Chapman has been targeted and hired. And I will say this. First off, I'll tell you guys what I reached out to a source at Tulane, and I was told basically that Chapman was the one that developed their guys into Power 5 transfers and legitimate, viable draft prospects. And I'll read the full message where it said Tulane didn't have overwhelming defensive line strength last year, as in literally their physical strength, not the strength of the position, but their physical strength on the defensive line. Chapman developed both interior and exterior players because he was working with the D tackles and the D ends in that system. Into Power 5 transfers and viable draft prospects while adding a ton of depth along the defensive line. He's a large reason why our rush defense was as damn good as it was. And I also shared that when I first texted that person to reach out about Chapman, the response was F off because he's great. So that was the first response about Chapman. Then, of course, Chapman got hired, and I forgot who it was, but someone posted a picture from Tulane's social media team about Gerald Chapman, and they had quotes from players that played under Gerald Chapman and a coach that Gerald Chapman coached under, because Gerald Chapman spent 2 years, 2019 and 2020, with the Cincinnati Bengals, which is where two of these quotes come from. Then he spent 2021 with the LSU Tigers, which is where another two of these quotes come from. 2022 was with Colorado, 2023 was with Tulane. The past 3 seasons, Gerald Chapman has joined a program and their head coach has changed teams after. Because in 2021, LSU, that was the year that Coach O got fired, as in finished the 2021 season, then Coach O got fired. 2022, Colorado, they all got fired as well. And then 2023, Willie Fritz went to Houston after the season. He got bumped up basically to Power 5. And so the past 3 years, Gerald Chapman has gone to a place and their head coach has left after that season. But just from players and Coach O, yeah, quotes, Carlos Dunlap's the first one, which former Florida Gator, also former Cincinnati Bengals defensive end, Chiefs most recently. Not sure if he's currently on a team, but I believe it was Chiefs most recently. But Carlos Dunlap said, I'm excited for Coach G, as been when he got hired to Tulane. It was clear to me from day one that he loves and is a student of the game. He's not only a great teacher, but an influential leader in the development of men, giving me advice on numerous occasions. I hope that defensive line is ready because Coach G certainly will be. Coach O said Coach Chapman is one of the top up-and-coming defensive line coaches in the country. That should stick out to you a bit because guess what? A lot of Florida Gators fans were like, okay, Coach O, D-line coach at Florida. This is a guy who was a D-line coach talking about Gerald Chapman, who is the D-line coach. The quote continues with, he is extremely knowledgeable about all facets of defensive line play and is an excellent recruiter with outstanding character. Having those attributes are a must when you're on Willie's staff at Tulane because of the championship culture that Coach Fritz has constructed there. Geno Atkins, I believe he was a Georgia Bulldog, and then went on to be a Cincinnati Bengals D tackle that was elite for years in the NFL. He said, Coach Gerald is not only a great coach, but also a wonderful family man. During my time with the Cincinnati Bengals, you could tell that he really cared about players by getting to know us on a personal level. He's a student of the game with his film preparation and the breakdown of the plays of the opposing offense. He's also always willing to go the extra mile by staying after practice with guys to help them perfect their craft. In short, Coach Gerald is a man that's about work and is going to push you to be great each and every day. And BJ Ojolari, who was with LSU, who was on LSU when Gerald Chapman was there, he was the defensive end there, said Coach G is one of the best coaches out there. He's definitely a player's coach who will push you to achieve greatness. He's very knowledgeable at the highest level, and his work ethic is second to none. So all of that to really just say that resounding reviews about Gerald Chapman from people who worked with him or played under him. And I will say, I personally don't know a ton about him. But if those are the reviews, I will be happy about that. We also had Makai Wingo tweeted that he was one of the best. So guess what? We've got an internal source telling me F off because he's so great that they didn't want him to leave Tulane. We've got players who played under him saying he's great. You got Coach O saying he's great. I'm going to take it as a positive until they give me a reason not to. Okay? That's going to be my approach with Gerald Chapman as the new Florida Gators defensive line coach. Then there was another change, which if you're in the subtext group, you know who I was told is going to be the strength and conditioning coach to replace Mark Hockey, who is getting reassigned because it's a whole thing. It just makes no sense whatsoever to me, if we're being honest, but expecting a new strength and conditioning coach. As far as offensive coordinator goes for Florida, I was told weeks ago to expect Willie Korn in January. And I very openly was like, hey, I'm not going to be the one to talk about that because if it's not public, I'm not going to be the one to make it public. And then Chris Doring said it, and then Shane Matthews said it, and then Zach Ebalverdi posted or tweeted the other day. I forgot if it was like a screenshot of a tweet or if it was his actual tweet. But that is not going to happen, that Willie Korn isn't going to be the OC at Florida. So I'll be honest, I have not asked for an update. I've been focused on recruiting, but I'm upset just because, again, I've been very open that I'm a big fan of Willie Korn and what he presents. So to not have him there kind of really sucks a bit, but is what it is, I guess, for Florida. There's still a lot that this team has to do, this coaching staff has to do, but those are the most recent updates. It is indeed time to focus a bit more on the transfer portal. We'll get to that in a second. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. You got the NBA is on fire. You got the NFL is ending the year. You've got bowl season college basketball season in conference play is beginning. It's going to be wild. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to kick off the NFL season. I remember that FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're not going to get too specific on some of these names, but we are going to wrap up by talking about the transfer portal because that is obviously an area where Florida still very much needs to target and attack, especially because going into signing day, we kind of knew Amaris Williams was flipping, Darius Hayes was flipping, then Isaiah Williams was the kind of surprising flip there. Florida's class fell to 15. It also just genuinely got a bit weaker. Defensive line, you lost a big commit in Amaris Williams. You lost a receiver, but you also gained a receiver because you had Chimere Dike from Wisconsin, who had, I think it was 700 yards and 6 touchdowns during Graham Mertz's last season in Wisconsin. So you've added names. You've added one guy in the trenches on both sides and one guy outside at both sides. So you are on both sides of the ball. So you've added some help, but your high school class, got considerably weaker yesterday. You did add Jaden Ball, you did add Gregory Smith III, but you lost a highly ranked commit in Amaris Williams. Your class got weaker in high school, and it's not a huge class to begin with, which is fine because, again, we spoke about this months ago before it was even the plan that, hey, Florida's going to take a smaller class and then hit the portal heavy. They did take a smaller class, but not necessarily by their choice. 18 commits out of high school, 4 through the transfer portal so far. But there's still, plenty of areas where this Florida Gators team needs to improve. And 2, plenty of talent that is either in the portal or going to hit the portal. A lot of these guys are going to declare after bowl game or are going to announce their intention to enter the portal after their bowl games. We just got Evan Stewart hit the portal yesterday, I think it was. Texas A&M wide receiver, meaning the 2 top players. From Texas A&M. Cam Ward is still in the portal, who he's a great kid. Trevor Etienne's still technically in the portal. AJ Harris is in the portal. Trey Moore is still in the portal for now, we'll say. Not sure what's going to happen with DJ Uiagalelei, quarterback from Morgan State and Clemson. But if you're Florida, I'm looking still at offensive tackle. I get it. You added Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon. I am a fan of what he brings to the table. I'm looking for another tackle to bring in. Luke Newman, Holy Cross, highest rated on 3 right now. Micah Sahakian is one that interests me because his numbers are fantastic. Just looking at what he allowed pressure-wise and everything on PFF, fantastic numbers for Micah Sahakian, but said he wants to redshirt this year, and I cannot find if there's an injury. Michael Tarquin is the 3rd highest rated offensive tackle in the portal. Kentucky's offered him, and he's interested. Florida has re-offered him. I'm not sure how open he is. That one's weird to me too. Because when he left, I was told he wasn't thrilled with the coaching staff, the 2 O-line coach approach. So unless he knew something was changing, or he went to USC and he was like, wow, it's actually not that bad to go to Florida with the O-line staff, then it's odd to want to come back to that. But there's a ton of offensive tackles in the portal. I'd imagine that Florida is still going to take some dips and try to make something happen. I don't think that you necessarily need to look at the interior offensive line too much for Florida. Jake Slaughter was arguably your best offensive lineman last season. Richie Leonard IV was the 2nd best to me. And Micah Mazuka, when healthy, should be a solid player. I know that I've seen a lot of people mention like, oh, go for a quarterback to push Graham Mertz. That's just not going to happen. Like, you're not going to find a transfer portal quarterback that's going to come in and push Graham Mertz. Because Graham, one, I don't think Graham would have come back if that was an option. And two, with Graham there and DJ Lagway as a true freshman that has signed now, an outside quarterback is going to look at Florida and say, they have their guy who's the clear front runner to start in 2024, and then they have their guy who's the clear front runner to start in 2025. What's the real upside? So I think unless you grab, like last year, Spencer Sanders going to Ole Miss, and he just knew, he's like, yeah, I'm going to be depth, get another year of college, have another year of college fun, and try that one, which I don't think there's a guy like that in the portal. Running back, I don't know what Florida does if they hit the portal at all for that. I do think that you have to look at, I think, bringing in a tight end that can specifically be Hayden Hanson's backup, because I don't think that you've got a ton of depth there. And I think that's a hard spot to replace. I think with Amir Jackson, if you can get him up to speed, then maybe he can be Arliss Boardingham's backup in 2024. Tony Livingston can also kind of play both spots there. So maybe he's just the answer at depth, and you just hope that you don't hit an injury bug at all, which I'll knock on wood for. Like, you look to the edge group and you look for a jack linebacker that could step in. I don't think you need to go more into defensive line after adding Joey Slackman. I don't think that you have to go at linebacker with all the youth that you've added there and the players that you have there currently. I don't think you need to go linebacker too much. I do think they will, because I think the plan when they lost to Darius Hayes was, we'll add a depth linebacker in the portal. I just don't think you need to, but I'm not going to be upset if you do. I think you have to go in and get a corner somewhere. I know that Bridges, who committed to Florida, is listed as a corner. He's going to be playing safety. He played safety in high school. He was recruited as a safety. He moved to corner because Oregon needed him there, and then he got passed up there. So fully expecting Bridges to be playing safety at Florida. That is the plan. We'll get into specific names next week after Christmas, after the holidays. If you have specific players that you want me to talk about, or you want to throw a name in the hat, feel free to do that. Or throw a hat in the ring. I don't know why you're just throwing names and hats, but if you want to throw a hat in the ring, go ahead. We did it last year where we had full episodes about guys, like Keon Coleman was one, which would have been fun. But hey, what do I know? I just host a podcast. That's all I can give you, really. But for Florida, there's plenty to go. So we're going to talk about specific players. We're going to talk about coaching changes that are going to be happening, hopefully, at least. But thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back later or tomorrow. I have no idea what's in store news-wise. If there's a portal commit or anything for Florida, which not trending right now, I think, for anyone that would pop today, but just maybe. But for Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33, and I'll see you all when I see you.